In the brutal, bone-chilling winter of Chicago, where the wind coming off Lake Michigan doesn't just blow, it screams, a decision made in under 2 minutes cost a young man his entire livelihood. Lucas, a 19-year-old baker with flour in his veins and a heart too big for his chest, handed a warm, fresh baguette and a cup of soup to a trembling figure at the back door of a high-end bakery. When the stranger asked how he could ever repay him, Lucas smiled, his breath turning to ice crystals in the air, and said, "Just pay it forward when you're warm, my friend." Seconds later, the heavy steel door slammed open. The arrogant, immaculately dressed owner of L'Elite Boulangerie stormed out, threw Lucas's apron into the dirty slush of the alley, and humiliated him in a way that would shatter anyone's spirit. He fired the boy for stealing inventory to feed a rat. But what that owner, blinded by greed and status, didn't know was that the shivering man in the alley was not a homeless drifter. He was a man who held the keys to the city's culinary kingdom. And that firing in the snowstorm wasn't the end of Lucas's story. It was the yeast that would make his destiny rise to heights no one could imagine. Before we reveal the identity of the stranger and the incredible twist that followed, please subscribe to our channel. We share stories of those who dared to be kind in a cold world, proving that the warmth of the human spirit can melt even the hardest ice. I will tell you this story from the very beginning, with every detail that makes it matter. It was a Tuesday morning in late January, the kind of Chicago morning that locals call the Hawk. The temperature was hovering around minus 15 degrees Fahrenheit. The city was a landscape of gray steel and white snow, paralyzed by a polar vortex. But inside the kitchen of L'Elite Boulangerie on the Magnificent Mile, the air was tropical, thick with the intoxicating aroma of caramelized butter, toasted yeast, and vanilla. Lucas stood at the massive marble island, his hands deep in a mound of dough. At 19, he was thin, with tired eyes that carried the weight of a 40-year-old, but his hands moved with the grace of a concert pianist. He wasn't just baking, he was communicating with the dough. He knew exactly how much hydration the flour needed based on the humidity of the room. He knew when the gluten was developed just by the resistance against his fingertips. This wasn't a skill he learned in a fancy culinary school in Paris. It was an inheritance. His grandfather, Nonno Giuseppe, had owned the most beloved bakery in Little Italy for 50 years before passing away. Giuseppe didn't leave Lucas money. Medical bills for Lucas's younger sister, Sophia, had taken all of that. Sophia had been in a severe car accident 2 years prior, and the costs of her physical therapy and surgeries were a black hole that swallowed every penny Lucas earned. But Nonno Giuseppe left something more valuable than money, a jar of sourdough starter, a levain that was 80 years old. It was a living culture of wild yeast, bubbling and alive, that gave bread a flavor complexity impossible to replicate commercially. Lucas kept a small jar of it hidden in the back of the walk-in fridge at work, feeding it daily like a secret pet. He called it the soul. L'Elite Boulangerie, however, had no soul. It was a temple of vanity owned by Marcus Sterling. Sterling was a man who didn't care about the taste of the bread, only how it looked on Instagram. He sold the golden croissant for $15 apiece to tourists and influencers. He was a tyrant who measured success in margins and appearance. He forbade employees from taking home leftovers. He preferred to pour bleach on unsold bread in the dumpster rather than devalue the brand by letting the poor eat it. That morning, the pressure was suffocating. Sterling was in his glass-walled office overlooking the kitchen, screaming into his phone about a supplier who was late with the imported French chocolate. Lucas was pulling a tray of rustic baguettes from the deck oven. The crust crackled, the song of the bread, as his grandfather used to call it. As he moved the rack to the cooling area near the back exit, he saw a shadow through the frosted, reinforced glass of the service door. Ideally, he should have ignored it. Sterling had a strict no loitering policy. But the shadow slumped against the doorframe, sliding down. It was minus 15 degrees outside. A human being couldn't survive long out there. Lucas looked at the camera in the corner. It had a blind spot near the heavy mixer. He looked at Sterling in the office, whose back was turned. Lucas made a choice. He cracked the heavy steel door open. The wind rushed in like a physical blow, instantly freezing the sweat on his forehead. Huddled in the corner of the doorframe, sheltered slightly by the dumpster, was an elderly man. He wore an old, torn army jacket that looked thin as paper. His boots were wrapped in duct tape. His face was hidden by a scarf, but his eyes were visible, blue, watery, and terrified. He was shaking so violently that his teeth chattered audibly over the wind. "Sir," Lucas whispered, "you can't stay here. You'll freeze to death." The man looked up, his voice barely a rasp. I just need to smell it. The bread. It smells like home. I'm sorry. I'll move." He tried to stand but stumbled, his legs too stiff from the cold. Lucas's heart broke. He didn't see a stranger. He saw his nonno Giuseppe. He saw his sister Sofia, vulnerable and in need. "Wait here," Lucas said firmly. He ran back to the station. He didn't grab the burnt loaves or the day-old mistakes. He grabbed the most perfect baguette from the tray he had just pulled. Hot, golden, steaming. He sliced it open lengthwise, slathered it with expensive Normandy butter, and grabbed a paper cup, filling it to the brim with the rich onion soup that was prepping for the lunch rush. He returned to the door. "Here," Lucas said, handing the steaming food to the man. "Eat this, quickly. It will warm your blood." The man took the bread with trembling hands. He didn't just eat it, he inhaled the aroma first. He closed his eyes as he took a bite, and a tear leaked from his frozen lashes, tracing a path through the grime on his cheek. "My God," the man whispered. This is real. This isn't just flour and water. This is love. I haven't tasted this in 20 years. He looked at Lucas. "I have no money, son. How can I pay you?" "You don't owe me a cent," Lucas smiled, leaning against the doorframe to block the wind from hitting the man. "Just pay it forward when you're warm. Go to the shelter on State Street. Tell them Lucas sent you. They might have a bed." "Lucas," the man repeated, memorizing the name. "Thank you, Lucas." At that precise moment, the universe shifted. "What do you think you are doing?" The voice boomed from behind Lucas. He spun around. Marcus Sterling stood there, his face purple with rage, holding his smartphone as if he had just recorded the evidence. "Mr. Sterling, Silence!" Sterling shoved Lucas aside and looked at the old man with pure disgust. He kicked the snow near the man's feet. "Get away from my property, you filthy vagrant! Go, before I call the police!" The old man scrambled up, clutching the half-eaten baguette to his chest, and limped away into the blinding snow. Sterling slammed the door shut and turned on Lucas. The kitchen staff had stopped working. The silence was deafening, broken only by the hum of the refrigerators. "You are feeding my premium inventory to a rat?" Sterling hissed, stepping close to Lucas's face. Spittle flew from his mouth. "Do you know how much that butter costs? Do you know the margin on that soup?" "He was freezing, sir. It was 1 baguette. Take it out of my check. I'll pay double." "Your check?" Sterling laughed, a cruel metallic sound. "You don't have a check anymore. You are stealing from this company. You are diluting the exclusivity of my brand by turning my back door into a soup kitchen." "It's just bread, sir. It's food. It's meant to feed people," Lucas yelled back, for the first time in his life losing his temper. "What happened to your humanity?" "Humanity doesn't pay the rent on Michigan Avenue," Sterling screamed. "You are fired. Get out. Now. Leave your apron." "Fine," Lucas said, his hands shaking not from cold but from adrenaline. "I'll get my things." "No!" Sterling blocked his path to the locker room. "You leave now. Escort him out." He gestured to the 2 large dishwashers, who looked down, ashamed, but moved to obey. "My things, my coat, and my jar in the fridge," Lucas stammered. "I need my grandfather's starter." "Property of the bakery," Sterling sneered. "Everything on the premises belongs to me, including that rotting jar of slime you keep in my walk-in. Get out." Lucas was pushed out the back door, into the alley, into the -15-degree weather. He was wearing only his thin white baker's uniform and his non-slip clogs. No coat, no phone, no wallet, just the bitter cold biting into his skin instantly. He pounded on the door. "Please, just my coat, please." The lock clicked shut. Lucas stood there for a minute, the cold already burning his skin. He realized he had to move or he would die. He began to run. He ran the 40 blocks to his small apartment in the Pilsen neighborhood. By the time he arrived, his lips were blue, his fingers were numb and white, and he was sobbing uncontrollably. Not from the pain of the cold, but from the pain of losing the soul, his grandfather's legacy. He collapsed on the floor of his living room, where his sister Sophia was watching TV from her wheelchair. "Lucas! Oh my God, Lucas! What happened?" she cried, dragging herself to him with a blanket. "It's gone, Sophia," he wept, hugging her knees. "Everything! The job, the starter. I failed." The next week was a blur of darkness. Lucas developed a severe fever from the exposure but couldn't afford a doctor. He lay on the couch, delirious, while Sophia tried to cool his forehead with damp rags. The bills were piling up on the kitchen table like snowdrifts. The rent, the physical therapy, the electricity. When his fever broke, reality set in. He was blacklisted. Sterling had called other bakery owners, spreading lies that Lucas was a thief who stole expensive ingredients. Every door he knocked on was slammed in his face. "Sorry, kid, we heard about you. We don't hire thieves." Lucas was desperate. He was ready to sell his grandfather's watch, the last heirloom they had, just to buy groceries. Then, 10 days after the incident, a courier arrived at their door. He wasn't a regular mailman. He wore a uniform with gold piping. "Delivery for Mr. Lucas Rossi," the courier said. Lucas opened the heavy cream-colored envelope. Inside was a single card made of thick, expensive paper. "The owner of the Peninsula Chicago Hotel requests your presence tomorrow at 10 a.m. Ask for the penthouse kitchen. Do not be late." Lucas was confused. The Peninsula? It was one of the most luxurious hotels in the world. Why would they want a blacklisted baker? "Maybe they want to sue me for something?" Lucas worried. "Or maybe," Sophia said, her eyes bright with hope, "someone finally tasted your bread and realized the truth." The next morning, Lucas borrowed a coat from a neighbor. He took the train downtown, feeling small and out of place among the businessmen in their wool suits. He arrived at the Peninsula. The lobby was a cathedral of marble and chandeliers. He approached the concierge, his voice trembling. I have an appointment. Lucas Rossi." The concierge's demeanor changed instantly. He stood straighter. "Ah, Mr. Rossi. We have been expecting you. Right this way, sir." Lucas was led to a private elevator. It shot up to the top floor. The doors opened not into a hallway, but directly into a massive, state-of-the-art test kitchen. It was gleaming with copper pots, Italian ovens, and a view of the frozen lake that took his breath away. Standing by the window, with his back turned, was a man in a bespoke charcoal suit. "You know," the man said, his voice deep and cultured, "I have tasted bread in Paris, in Tokyo, in Vienna, but for years everything tasted sterile, mechanized." The man turned around. Lucas gasped. He grabbed the counter for support. It was the beggar. Clean-shaven now, healthy, powerful. But the blue eyes were unmistakable. "You," Lucas whispered. "The man in the alley." "Hello, Lucas," the man smiled gently. "My name is Arthur C. Vanderbilt. I own this hotel, and 40 others like it around the world. But the clothes, the tape on the boots." Vanderbilt walked over and poured 2 cups of coffee. "I am launching a new global culinary initiative. I was tired of hiring chefs who cook for egos. I wanted to find someone who cooks for the soul. So every winter I conduct a test. I dress as the lowest of the low, and I visit my own competitors' back doors." Vanderbilt took a sip of coffee. "I visited 6 bakeries that morning, Lucas. In 3, I was ignored. In 2, the police were called." "At Sterling's?" "Well, you know what happened. You were the only one who didn't see a bum. You saw a human being." Vanderbilt pressed a button on the wall, and a side door opened. A stunning, climate-controlled fermentation room was revealed. And there, sitting on a silver pedestal in the center of the shelf, was a glass jar. Lucas choked back a sob. No. "My lawyers paid a visit to Mr. Sterling yesterday," Vanderbilt said with a shark-like grin. "We retrieved your personal property. Sterling was quite cooperative when he realized who was asking. Vanderbilt handed Lucas a leather folio. "This is a contract, Lucas. I am firing my current head baker. He lacks warmth. I want you to run the bakery program for the peninsula globally. Starting salary is $150,000 a year, plus full medical benefits for you and your immediate family, including specialized physical therapy for your sister. I did my research." Lucas couldn't breathe. "Mr. Vanderbilt, I don't know what to say. I'm just a kid." "You are not just a kid. You are the man who gave his only coat or his only job to a stranger in the snow. That is the only qualification I care about. Do we have a deal?" Lucas signed the paper with shaking hands. 6 months passed. The bakery at the peninsula became the talk of Chicago. People lined up for blocks to buy the Rossi loaf, a rustic sourdough that was said to heal the spirit. Lucas implemented a 1-for-1 program. For every loaf sold, one was donated to the city's shelters. The kitchen was filled with laughter and music. Lucas hired people who had been rejected elsewhere: veterans, single moms, former addicts. He taught them that dough was alive, that it needed kindness. Then came the day of reckoning. It was mid-July. The bakery was bustling. Lucas was shaping loaves when the hostess came into the kitchen. "Chef, there is a man here to see you. He says it's urgent. He's trying to sell us equipment." Lucas wiped his hands on his apron, a crisp, clean white apron with his name embroidered in gold. "Send him in." The door opened. Marcus Sterling walked in, but the arrogance was gone. He looked disheveled. His suit was wrinkled. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in weeks. L'Elite Boulangerie had filed for bankruptcy a month prior. The word had gotten out about how he treated his staff, and combined with the rise of Lucas's bakery, his customers had abandoned him. Sterling looked up and saw Lucas. He froze. He looked around at the gleaming equipment, the happy staff, the abundance. "Lucas," Sterling whispered, You are the head baker?" Lucas didn't yell. He didn't scream. He simply stood tall, the master of his domain. "Hello, Marcus. I hear you have some ovens for sale." Yes," Sterling stammered, looking at the floor. "I lost the lease. I need to liquidate. I thought maybe you guys needed backups." Arthur Vanderbilt stepped out from the office, standing beside Lucas. "We only buy equipment that has been treated with respect, Mr. Sterling," Vanderbilt said coldly. "And frankly, your ovens have a bad aftertaste of greed. We are not interested." Sterling nodded, humiliated, and turned to leave. "Wait," Lucas called out. Sterling stopped, expecting a final insult. Lucas walked over to the cooling rack. He picked up a fresh, warm baguette. He placed it in a paper bag and walked over to his former boss. "You look hungry, Marcus," Lucas said, handing him the bag. "Take this. It's on the house." Sterling looked at the bag, then at Lucas's eyes. There was no hate there, only pity. And that pity hurt more than any anger could have. "Thank you," Sterling whispered, his voice cracking. He took the bread and walked out, disappearing into the city he used to think he owned. Lucas returned to his table. He plunged his hands back into the dough, feeling the warmth, the life, the legacy of his grandfather. "Why did you give him bread?" Vanderbilt asked quietly. Lucas looked at his mentor and smiled. "Because, sir, we don't bake bread to judge people. We bake bread to feed them, even the ones who don't deserve it, especially them. Maybe if he had tasted real kindness sooner, he wouldn't be who he is." Today, Lucas Rossi is not just a chef, he is a legend in Chicago. His sister, Sophia, now walks with a cane and manages the front of the house. And every winter, on the coldest day of the year, Lucas leaves the back door of the hotel kitchen open, with a pot of soup and a basket of warm bread, waiting for anyone who needs to be reminded that they are human. Kindness is a boomerang, my friends. It always comes back, often with more force than you threw it. If this story warmed your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe. And tell us in the comments, have you ever helped a stranger without expecting anything in return? Until the next story.